Now, I'm here with David Ninh. David is Senior Director of Press and Publicity for Kino Lorber, a major North American distributor of both American and international films. David, thank you very much for being here and answering my questions.
Sure. I guess it's evening where you are, or like late afternoon.
It is a bit later than where you are, yes, but we made it work. That's what matters.
Yep, I'm here. I just woke up.
So this year you're a jury member for the ASVOFF Fashion Film Festival, which is curated by Diane Pernet for the 2021 edition. It seems that, reading your background, it seems that fashion and style have been quite an integral part of your career. You were a style and entertainment writer for the Dallas Morning News. You also worked for 17 magazine. So can you tell me about your involvement with the ASVOFF Festival, with Diane Pernet, and with fashion film in general?
Well, I mean, I've been a fan of Diane's for a long time. I worked in fashion in Dallas. People are shocked when they hear that. They're like, Dallas? There's a lot of money in Dallas. Neiman Marcus is based in Dallas. JCPenney is based in Dallas. There's a lot of wealth there. The women that live there take fashion very seriously. So I think Texas, Dallas specifically, had a fashion section with their newspaper. It was a full section that was even in existence, I think, before the New York Times and LA Times had their fashion sections. I mean, they had a very dedicated staff who went and covered collections in Europe and New York, and certainly maybe it was probably because of all the business with Neiman Marcus, and luxury retail. So in college, I thought, okay, well, I want to be a writer. What am I interested in? I was very interested in film, very interested in fashion. I had followed it growing up through all the 90s supermodel stuff. So that was really fascinating to me. And I was interested in it as a business. So I interned there, and that led to a full-time job eventually where that was my beat, was to cover style, cover fashion, interview designers if they came through town. A lot of major designers came through Dallas, Michael Kors, international ones, because the business there is very vibrant with their luxury retail. So I was going to Fashion Week, going to New York, kind of thinking, why am I not living in New York? How do I pivot? Obviously, I was been aware of Diane for a long time and her history as a designer and influencer, and just knew her as a fan. I didn't know her at all. And then I met her I think I met her in Cannes, actually, because my boss at the time that I worked with at Film at Lincoln Center knew someone that knew her. And then I met her in Cannes, but there was a Thanksgiving that I had spent in Paris that I was invited to, and she was at the Thanksgiving dinner. So I had Thanksgiving with Diane first. So that was like, I walked in and I saw her. I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is that kind of dinner. It's like really nice. And I got to know her, and we've had a friendship ever since then. So I was in fashion for a while. I went to 17 magazine because I wanted to work in magazines and see how that was like. And it's a tricky time for magazines because of online and the immediacy of online and the competition. And magazines need to be very, very innovative to survive today. And I thought Hearst was a great place to work, but then I also realized that part of what I really loved was film. And so I transitioned to a job at Film at Lincoln Center. They're very renowned. They're the film department at Lincoln Center, and they do international cinema, the New York Film Festival every year. So I left 17 to go work there as a publicist, and that's kind of where my career just really took off in publicity and film.
All right, so you actually met at Cannes, which just goes to show how important I think the Cannes Festival is, and it was quite
it is
heartbreaking to see it canceled last year.
I know, it's heartbreaking. We love Cannes. I was going at the time with Kickstarter because Kickstarter's team was trying to figure out how to work with producers from around the world to convince a lot of international producers and more why the platform could be advantageous for filmmakers. And then I got to go to one of Diane's parties on a roof somewhere overlooking like the water and the yacht. And I was like, damn, this is amazing. And then, yeah, I wish she would come to New York. I don't think she wants to anymore, but if she does, I would take her out. But I think she's very tied to Europe and France. And so, yeah, we're really bummed about Cannes because in the pandemic, obviously, we had films. I'm at Kino Lorber now, so we had films that had played Cannes, and then we were releasing here in the United States when the pandemic happened. And then there were films that we bought out of Cannes last year when they sort of had, they were official selections, but there wasn't a physical festival. I worked on a really beautiful film called Slalom by Charlene Favier, and it
I
just
believe
kills
it's
me that,
playing in France right now.
yeah, and it kills me that she didn't get to have her moment to do like the carpet and have thousands of journalists, you know, see the film at the Palais. But you know, we still release the film because we think the film is very important and beautiful. But I wish, you know, for filmmakers like her, it really was heartbreaking that they didn't get to do it because of the pandemic. It's been a tricky year for all of us.
Yeah, COVID really affected many things related to cinema, and I imagine that in distribution you must have, you know, seen a lot of change as well. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit more about how Kino Lorber adapted to the pandemic. I read about Kino Marquee, which
Yep.
was basically Kino Lorber's decision not to go the way of VOD platforms, but to have what I think is called virtual theatrical releasing. Can you tell me
Yep.
more about this and generally how Kino Lorber handled the pandemic?
Sure. I mean, the pandemic happened. We were all running around. We had a major release of a film we bought from Can Bacurau, Brazilian thriller, and everything was ready to go. The marketing, the PR, the appearances. They had flown to New York for Q&As, and then the pandemic hit. And we had some screenings. We opened and we had to get them back to Brazil. You know, they were scared that they were going to be trapped in New York and everything was shutting down that second week of March. While we were releasing this major film, it was the biggest release that we worked on. And, you know, as a business, we had to really think about, okay, well, what are we going to do? Everything's already kind of in place. And do we just release it in digital? You know, other companies were holding back dates for their releases and holding back films. And we went the opposite direction. We thought people are home, they are trapped in their house, they're scared to go outside. How do we get their eyeballs on our work? Um, and we saw it as an opportunity. So I think the thing with virtual cinema was, you know, we work really closely with theaters, art house theaters in America, and they're very important to us. You know, we want to maintain those relationships. We care about them, you know, and we knew that they were going to be struggling closing their doors. There's just no doubt about that. So our team decided to come up with a program called Kino Marquee, where we worked with art house theaters across America and even organizations. And it was about 400, originally it was 11 theaters signed up. Film at Lincoln Center, a few here and there around New York and across the US. And then once we announced it widely to the theaters, they all thought that was an interesting idea. We split revenue with them. So let's say a film played on Kino Marquee and a certain theater sponsored the screening and did the marketing in their hometowns or their areas, they got half of the ticket sales. So we worked with the theaters to set up the pages for them where it looked like a marquee, almost like it would say like the theater presents, you know, Baccarat, click here. So essentially it's digital, but the way we were branding it was as a virtual theatrical experience. You're experiencing a new movie, you're still attending a cinema in your home. Um, we tried to do a lot of digging in with the different theaters to really encourage them to market the film in their areas. And I dealt with local critics to get there to drum up their audiences. It was successful, and you know, the more the theater was pushing to their audiences to the virtual theatrical, the more money they made. So at least they had some kind of revenue stream because they were closed. And so we realized in order for it to be successful, we needed to get more, it allowed us to really dig into more films that maybe we hadn't looked at before. Take chances, you know, with films that might not have been on our radar. We did partnerships with other distributors who saw what we were doing, and they saw that we had the manpower and the technology to set up, and we would partner with distributors on certain films. Good Deed Entertainment was one, Wellgo, who specializes in Asian cinema, and we would do a profit split with them too. So it was successful. I mean, it was over $1 million. You know, that might not sound like a lot, but to a lot of small art house theaters that are getting a percentage of that, that was something, you know, to help them out. We still have it going on because theaters are not all fully open in America right now. They're open in certain markets, and in certain markets like New York, they're at a certain capacity. So we're releasing in theater in the cities that are open at a capacity, but we're still doing virtual cinema because frankly, there's some people that don't want to go out and spend the money to drive to a theater, pay for the popcorn and watch a movie. They can still experience our films. And so we just, as a company, just really had to be scrappy and pivot and figure out, how are we going to make money? How are we going to support these films? How are we going to release these films that we already had on schedule? And luckily, I think the filmmakers that we work with already knew that we were very serious about it. They saw all the press that ran when we launched it and knew it was a positive thing. And I think there's sort of a philanthropic feel to it too, because audiences know that, hey, my local art house cinema is in trouble and they're closed because of COVID. I can at least watch something they're sponsoring and help them out with my ticket sale. So it's a new business model. We were very excited about it. We got a lot of attention for it. And also it was a way for us to expand and work with different kinds of cinema, which was exciting for me.
You mentioned Kickstarter
Yeah.
earlier, where you used to work as senior communications specialist from 2015 to 2018, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
For those listening who aren't familiar with the company, it's basically a crowdfunding platform which allows artists to give their projects visibility and find financial backers.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, how big of an impact do you think Kickstarter really had on financing and distribution in the arts and cinema specifically?
I think Kickstarter is a really interesting company. I wasn't really fully aware of the kind of money that was being raised by them when I started. I just looking at their stats now, which are online. They're very transparent about their numbers. As a whole, in the last, I think they're 10 years old now or 9 years old. They've raised 5.8 billion, I think. Yeah, $1 billion, $5.8 billion to art, to projects, to everything from arts and culture to tech to design, and out of 202,000 successful projects. So, and that's through the power of just community building and crowdfunding and these projects really digging in to raise the money. Kickstarter makes money because they take 5% of every successfully raised project. So the company, somebody has an idea that they want to put on Kickstarter, it really allows a lot of creative freedom for them to try to get something off the ground. So, you know, if they had a very cool idea for a tabletop game, there's tabletop games that raise millions of dollars because it's a cool, interesting idea. There's film projects that are like, I need to, you know, raise 10,000 for, you know, my short. And then sometimes those shorts go on to Sundance, or, you know, they've had Kickstarter every single year has had a film that has used the platform that has made it to be nominated for an Oscar. And I think last year had one that won an Oscar, where they used initial funds were raised on Kickstarter. The HBO show with Issa Rae, Insecure, way back in the day, she didn't have a lot of money and used Kickstarter for her online web series, Awkward Black Girl, which got her the attention and the notice to eventually make Insecure. So there's a lot of really successful projects like that. And for film specifically, I'm looking at the numbers. It's been $499 million to film and video projects. And so my job when I was there, I was the first film PR person they hired. There was an art PR person that they hired along with me, but she left. And once she left, I kind of absorbed her role, and I had to step up and really dig into what does arts and culture mean at Kickstarter, and how does a platform help artists on a very micro level. You know, and then it was everything from, you know, the artists starting out small to kind of established people who would try the platform to raise money because they already had an existing base. So I found that company really interesting. They too went through some pandemic woes. They had to lay off their staff, some of their staff, and they had some troubles in the press regarding unionizing, and which actually their employees have unionized, which is a great thing. But they're still on the very base level, a really amazing platform if you're an artist trying to raise money, trying to figure it out. And to use a platform like that, where it's very easy to outline in a video what you want to do with your passion, how you want to raise that money, and how you want community to be involved with raising to help you get your art and your project, bring it to life. It's still a really great platform. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of newsletters, and the people that still work there, I'm still friends with all the film people. The two film women in film that still work there, Elise McCabe and Liz Cook. Each of them do narrative and documentary. I went to Cannes with them because we were in Cannes trying to do meetings with different producers to really explain what the platform was all about, you know, and how that could work for their filmmakers in their respective countries. And just for awareness, you know, of how it worked in America. So that was when I got to go to Cannes. I don't get to go to Cannes anymore because of budget, but when I got to go to Kickstarter, we really dug in, and a lot of people outside of America were like, what's crowdfunding? What's Kickstarter? And there are some countries that have their own platforms where they support artists. But that was when I met Diane. It was when I was with Kickstarter, actually.
I think it's quite a hopeful case. I mean, it just speaks a lot towards community building in cinema,
Yep.
that people, even non-professionals, people who aren't professionals in the industry, just come together to make projects happen that they're excited about. I think it's a wonderful success story.
Yeah.
The next question is a bit more of a Vanity Fair type question, if I can say. You also worked at Lincoln Film Center, which
Yep.
organizes the New York Film Festival, among other events. You manage logistics for guests of the festival. I was wondering if there were any specific guests, any filmmakers or actors who particularly stood out for you for any reason
Oh
whatsoever.
my gosh. I was there for 4 years, so everybody came through. It was like very bizarre because it's like one morning it could be Nicole Kidman, and then in the evening it's like, you know, Kate Blanchett all in one day. You know, it was always nonstop. And with the New York Film Festival, with all the premieres, it's an incredible launch pad for the premieres in New York, and there were a lot of world premieres there. So I worked with everybody, and it was eye-opening because to me, I don't get starstruck really. I kind of am too busy to think about that. It's like, okay, what are their needs? Are they comfortable? Are their teams comfortable? But I mean, I have to admit, when I worked with George Clooney, he was very easy and he did a press line. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes the talent, they don't really want to do like the whole press line, or they just want to do photos and they don't want to, they're just kind of in a rush, you know, which is fine. But he stood there and he talked to every single reporter, like every single one, from like the popular one to the one at the end of the line. And he looked them in the eye. He answered any questions they had. He was really gracious. He just knew that like he was there to sort of promote the film. And then he thanked me and he just was generous, you know, and I was kind of just a little bit, wow, he just knows, he's just a classic Hollywood class act. You know, like he was great. We worked on a gala for Barbara Streisand that was really major. I'm a big fan of hers, and I've never worked on anything on that scale. President Clinton gave her an award called the Chaplin Award, which Film at Lincoln Center, every year they give somebody really major in film an award, and it's their biggest fundraiser of the year. So there was a lot of people there. She was there, Liza Minnelli performed, Tony Bennett performed. It was just kind of one of those moments that was surreal. Like planning that took an entire village, you know, every detail. For me in Publicity, especially for her to feel comfortable. And people are always like, what was that like? And like, is she scary? And I was like, no, she wasn't. She was a joy. She and her team are very organized, and I'm very organized, so it was a perfect fit. You know, like she came, everything was handled from top to bottom for her. She was very excited to be honored, and it was just surreal standing there backstage with her and Hillary Clinton over here and Bill Clinton over here and Catherine Zeta-Jones over here. And I just kind of was like, this is like the most weird moment ever. But also I was thinking ahead, like, okay, they need to be on schedule. They need to be here next. I need to move them from this room to the next room. So I think those are my favorites, but also all the international talent that I've followed for years came to Ho Xiao Shen, Dipla Shen, you know, for the film festival, and it was really amazing. It's you know, all of the main people always came, so that was. But to me, like some of the talent that really also stands out are the lesser known talent who go on to become really big. Like we opened Pariah by Dee Reese, and I remember she came, and you know, she just kind of was so excited that this movie was. She's like, I can't believe this is playing at Film at Lincoln Center. And I just remember just being with her all night hanging out, and now she's wildly, you know, has gone on. So there were a lot of filmmakers like that they were just so proud to be there and to have their film play at that in their venues and then move on to bigger things.
Diriz is the director of Mudbound, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah.
And out of all the film releases for which that you have worked on now at Kino Lorber, if you had to name one campaign that was particularly interesting or special for you, either because of the challenges that it raised, or maybe the way you approached it, or just your personal affinity with the movie?
Oh gosh. I think there's two. One, we do restorations also. It's very important for us to really support cinema that either we restore or we work with other people, other companies have restored and we release. One was called The Queen by Frank Simon. People can watch it on Netflix. It's about a legendary drag show that was very underground in 1969, I believe, and Andy Warhol judged it here in New York, and it was a document of that drag show. and Crystal LaBeija, who went on to found House of LaBeija, is in it, and it's a very famous pivotal scene where she doesn't win, and she gets really angry about it. It was one of these films that was kind of, for me, a discovery that I had seen somewhere like years ago, and the fact that, oh, Kino Lorber is gonna work on the restoration, or is gonna work on the restoration and release the restoration. Um, and I was really proud to work on that as somebody queer. I was just like, wow, this is a really vital document of from the queer community, of when, you know, these men were like, had to be underground and it was illegal for them. And, you know, they had to figure out, you know, the right venue to secretly do this drag show, and Andy Warhol judged it. There was just a lot of history there. So that was one that I was really, really proud of. And, you know, I think the others, I love all the stuff that we end up acquiring out of Cannes, because it makes me feel really good when, you know, we're able to acquire out of the festival, like something really special. So we've released Kantemir Balagov's Beanpole, Bacurau, Jean-Luc Godard's films, The Image Book. That was surreal because I don't really, he doesn't do press really. So I was not working directly with him, but to know that I was doing the publicity for a Jean-Luc Godard film, which who knows, maybe it's his last one, was kind of inspiring and pretty amazing. And, you know, his films aren't for everybody. So I had to figure out how to position, you know, something like The Image Book, um, and then with the right kind of press. But I recently, the thing that really gave me a lot of joy recently, I had a film called Test Pattern, by a Black director, female director. And it didn't have much of a profile. It didn't play a lot of major festivals at all. It didn't play like the big festivals. And we watched it and we knew there was something special with it. The movie centers on a Black female who gets assaulted and she's trying to find a rape kit in Texas. And, you know, that's a heavy subject for a lot of people. And we got the best press that I could have ever imagined. Like Rolling Stone called it a masterpiece, you know. Richard Brody at the New Yorker wrote a feature. Like everybody raved, critic-wise, raved about the film because it was a new voice, you know, and she's going to be huge. And she already, because of the success of the press and the film opening, it made me feel good that she was like, wow, like you guys really knocked it out of the park. Like nobody really paid attention to me in this film before. And now she just got signed for representation with UTA, United Talent Artists. And she's like, I'm already working on my next 2 films, you know, because of the support, and being signed. And so that was something that happened very fast. And I was trying to wrap my brain around it. I'm like, wow, this is a tough film to market, but it really wasn't. It really was because she made a really beautiful cinematic film that really spoke to a lot of the audience, you know, not even just Black women, but like a lot of non-Black people who saw it really felt immersed into the challenges that Black women face, and obviously insight into what Black women deal on a daily basis and how they're treated in the medical community. We did things like we showed it to nurse organizations, and one of the leading nurse organizations in America put out a press release that said, you know, everyone in the medical community needs to watch this film because of the challenges Black women face. So things like that, I felt really, I don't even want to take credit for it, but like I felt really proud that I could help it along and get it the press and get it noticed and put it on people's radar with our, you know, Kino Lorber backing. But you know, she had trouble finding distribution with this film before, and nobody at the festival level really wanted to play it. And I'm really happy that we were able to step up. And to me, her film is just as important as the Cannes films that we acquire. Like it's going to be watched for years to come, and a really important important film in our library. And I can't wait to see what she does next. And her name's Shatara Michelle Ford. So, you know, knowing that I sort of helped and touched that, and it's gonna be the next big thing, hopefully, with her future films. It makes me feel really good.
What's the name of the film again? Can you?
Test Pattern.
Test
Test Pattern?
Okay.
Yeah.
You minored in women's studies at university, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
care about women.
yeah, that's been going on a while. And I was wondering what you think is your responsibility within a major distributor regarding minority voices and how to promote their film, and also how much leeway do you have really to do that?
Well, so we're small. People think Kino Lorber is like really huge. We're really small. We're out of New York. We don't have like an international office. We don't have an LA office. We're in New York, and my boss is Richard Lorber. He's our CEO and president, and Wendy Lydell, who is our senior vice president, and they do the acquisition. So they go to the festivals, they look at everything, but we have the autonomy to look at films too, on our theatrical team, and we can get links from the sales agents, and if it's festival world, festival time, and my bosses are at festivals, they'll kind of look at things and be like, hey, we're unsure about this. Can you look at it? We'd love to get your eye. So I really do feel very involved in the process. Obviously, as a company, we're very sensitive to making sure that we promote more than white men and look at women filmmakers, who's the next big voices, look at international film. So that's the thing that I love about this job, is that my day-to-day, I could be working on a Black female film about sexual assault. The next day, it's like working on something for Jean-Luc Godard. The next day, it's working on a movie out of Mexico by a rising female artist. So I think, women filmmakers obviously are important to us. I think the way we look at the films, we don't even really look at, capping numbers or anything like that. We look at the film and its quality, and quite frankly, the quality of women filmmakers is astounding. There's so much out there that's amazing, and we work with a lot of female filmmakers nonstop. So it's interesting, because sometimes it goes through these waves where I'm just like, oh, we've worked with a lot of dudes recently, and then now I'm in a wave where, like, because of just the scheduling, like every film on my slate is by a woman director, and I just think it's just, that's just happenstance. It's not really planned out, and obviously international voices are so important, and we want audiences to feel like us, to feel a sense of discovery, and so, cinema from around the world, depending on what it is, and its subject is important to us. So yeah, we look everywhere. We try to look beyond just, the Cannes, the Venice, the Berlin. They all have, thankfully, their curators and programmers do a really good job. But, somebody like Shatara Michelle Ford, female filmmaker, Black in America, who didn't have her film in Cannes, she emailed us directly with her producer. It was like, hey, I don't have a sales agent right now, but, the reason why I feel like you should look at this film, she listed the reasons, and we saw it, and we're like, wow, this is really powerful and really beautifully made. And there's a lot to be said about gatekeeping in this industry, especially festival gatekeeping, and we want to be mindful of that, and not just only look to the top key festivals, but look beyond, and where our blind spots might be. Where can we find talent that's making noise? And we rely on our sales agents because of the volume of films out there. But, we try to keep our radar and our finger on the pulse, because we know that there's chances that there could be discoveries out there that don't have those resources, or don't have a sales agent, or don't get into like a Sundance or Cannes.
And speaking of female filmmakers, this year at the Oscars, it was the first time that two women were nominated for Best Director. Chloe Zhao won for Nomadland, and
Mhm.
Emerald Fennell was nominated for Promising Young Woman.
Yep.
Um, that might just be your personal opinion, but I was wondering, do you think this means things are changing at the Oscars? Is there a real change, or is this more of an exceptional year that might not happen again so soon?
I mean, I think the thing with the Oscars and awards in general is really interesting because I think for far too long, um, they need to diversify their voters. That's very clear, that's very clear in the press. Look at the Golden Globes and all the stuff that just blew up with them. They didn't even have one Black writer, and that's really such a blind spot. And I'm really hopeful that the award system, I go back and forth because I kind of feel like awards are awards, it's like what matters is, that you made this art. But awards, unfortunately, are a necessity and are important for this industry. And the fact that a Chloe won, I mean, I can't imagine what that's going to do for so many women filmmakers and Asian women filmmakers to be inspired to reach. They know that they have the chance to reach that level with a film like Nomadland, which really at the base of it is about a woman, an older woman trying to find her way in the world on her journey, and who would have thought that like that, you know, compared to, other Hollywood things that have won, would win. It was such a special year. I mean, I think, with the focus on independent cinema, which is what was being released, and like a lot of big studios weren't really putting out a lot of stuff, that now people can realize, wow, a Chloe Zhao Nomadland deserves to be up there next to a Titanic, and for us it's good because it's like I'll never work on a film like Titanic because that's just not the PR I do. But I work within the space where, Kino Lorber released Chloe's first film, and so the fact that like we
Was that
released
songs my father taught me? Yeah.
Songs of My Brother, the fact that Kino released that first, I wasn't there. It was maybe like 5 years ago, and that she went on to win Best Director is like makes us really proud that like we were at least associated with her in the beginning, for her first film and distributing it. So I don't think it's a fluke. I think that there's audience to be had, there's money to be made, there's different audience to tap into. And I think sometimes Hollywood fixates on like that certain 18 to 35-year-old white male, and like they can't look at that anymore because look at some of these films that have come out recently, like Crazy Rich Asians. I remember people thinking like, well, is that going to do well? Are people going to go see it? Are Asian audiences going to go see it? And that was being questioned. And then look how much money it made. It's kind of like if you don't try to put out different kinds of work, you're not going to learn that there's a hunger for different kinds of stories, and I think I was really proud of this year, during a pandemic year that was tough, how many non-white people got nominated for awards. But there's still a lot of work to do, like look at the Golden Globes. Like that's insane to me that there is not one Black member in in their voting pool, and that they were kind of getting slightly defensive, and it just blew up in their face, and we work on awards too. We try our best. We've had some documentary nominations, and I worked on one nomination of Fathers and Sons, and that was a crash course for me in awards and campaigns and the logistics and the money and the networking that needs to go into a nomination. And a lot of that business stuff is really tricky, but ultimately it comes down to how powerful the film is.
Finally, so Kino Lorber has quite the extensive catalog of classic films. I believe they include early D.W. Griffith, Buster Keaton, German expressionist films.
Yep.
What do you think is the relevance of such a catalog in the age of binge watching and platforms, and how much resonance does it find with today's audiences?
I think what's people are shocked is that we actually still have a home video business, because we sell Blu-rays and DVDs, and then we're constantly pumping out lots of titles, old and new. We have a really kick-ass person in our staff who's a VP who negotiates a lot of this stuff, because a lot of it is under vaults or under lock and key, or hasn't been released in a long time, and hasn't gotten a DVD release for years. And the home video business part of Kino is really healthy. Now we're kind of like studying this, like, wow, why is this the case? Because there's the Netflix, there's the binging. Well, there's collectors out there. We know how to tune into collectors who love to brag about their home video. They tweet about it, they talk about it. There's home video reporters who sit all day long and just talk about like the quality of a Blu-ray, and a lot of those older movies, I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia, there's a lot of history, and we want to save it. You know, we want to make sure new generations see that stuff. We released a really major work called Pioneers, the First Women Filmmakers. And it was all works that we worked to restore, from Lois Weber and Alice Guy Blaché, and like all of these women that made movies that were forgotten, you know, in the early 1900s. And some of this work had never been seen, or like was very rarely shown. We put it on into a DVD Blu-ray package, and it completely went viral. It went, you know, got a New York Times cover story. It was a sense of discovery for new audiences. Like, wow, these were like the pioneers of filmmaking, and they were women. And like, how, you know, if you work in film and you live and eat and breathe film and you don't know about them, that's kind of a blind spot. So I think for some of these classic works, I think there is an audience for it, and they're hungry for it, and they realize, you know, to look at the history of cinema, it's really important to look at early works, and we do really well with it actually when we release it on home video. So we're shockingly finding that there's collectors out there who still pay money to increase their collection. So that's part of our business aside from the theatrical releasing.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. You're speaking to someone who owns a huge number of DVDs still.
I'll have to send it to you. I'll have to send some to you.
I completely get it.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.